Since we started this, we haven't really reassessed whether or not it's something we want to continue doing. I guess we could do that at some point.
Yeah, at some point we'll do it.
I figured as long as
No, the thing is we just have to go as long as possible without assessing.
Right.
So that we can keep doing it.
Yeah. Because
whether or not we want to.
As soon as we assess, we'll figure out that it's not worth
it's not worth the effort.
Yeah. So
good morning.
Good morning. This is the Obscurigami podcast, a podcast about obscure things. I'm your host, Thomas.
Who are you?
Flight. Your host.
Okay.
This is my co-star.
Who am I?
And founder.
I founded you.
Ben Page.
We told you your dad listens to this podcast.
Oh, sorry.
He's the founder.
Yeah.
He founded you.
Yeah. My co-founder of this podcast.
I'm Ben.
Ben Page.
That's me.
In this podcast, we talk about obscure things that we find interesting.
Obscure things like Thomas Flight and Ben Page.
This week will be no different.
Except better.
I have a whopper of a topic.
It is a doozy.
Ben knows what this topic is going in because we did this episode once before. So we're going to do it again, and Ben's going to act like I'm
going to be very surprised.
Yeah. He's going to act like he's surprised and
I actually
try to be interested.
Kind of don't remember all the details.
Right.
So
I also love how we never established as a premise of this show that the other one doesn't know what the topic is, but it's just become a thing.
Right.
But I think it's actually...
Did we ever do one where we both knew what it was going into it?
I think one of the first few.
No, I don't think so.
I think Magma, I knew you were going to do Magma. But I accidentally listened to the wrong band. so yeah, for the Magma episode, I knew you were doing Magma, but I accidentally listened to the other band that we haven't done a podcast on.
Yeah.
And so I thought I had prepared by listening to their music, but I actually hadn't.
Gotcha.
But I think other than that and the Kinzaza episode, it's been mostly a surprise. And now this, because I already did this.
And now this.
So Hannah always hears her voice in the recording when I edit, and she's like, I didn't know you were recording. And I'm like, I think you did at the time. Okay. So
I kind of like her role in the podcast.
Yeah.
Of just being the voice that speaks out really sarcastic comments quietly in the background. I think it grounds us.
So going into this topic, this topic is vaguely related to Coca-Cola, the company, the brand, the soda.
What?
Coca-Cola.
What is that? I've never heard of that.
It's very, very obscure. One of the most obscure sodas.
Gotcha.
You'll have ever heard of.
Is it as obscure as Pepsi? Because nobody's ever heard of Pepsi.
It is, yes, more obscure than Pepsi. No, I have this fun little Coke fact so that I can segue from Coke into the actual soda.
Let's do Coke.
But did you know that Coca-Cola claims that it invented the coupon? You did know that because I told you last.
No.
Yeah.
I did not know before you told me
that
Coke claims to invent the coupon.
Yeah, the origin of the coupon is not really that well known, or I guess it's not widely agreed upon the origin, but yeah, Coke claims they had some vouchers for I think 10 cents off or 5 cents off or something.
Did that originate in a city or a specific place, or was it?
It was used in America. I don't know. You gotta ask me, Ben, when you ask me questions about topics, you gotta ask me questions specifically about the
I'm trying to think
things
I know I asked a question last time, and I'm trying to think of what it was.
That's all right. We'll move on. So the topic this week is not about Coca-Cola.
Is it about coupons?
It's not about coupons. It's about OK Soda, which is a obscure, little-known experimental soda from the early 90s that Coke released, and it was only out for a few years. And it had some pretty unique branding, so I think it's worth exploring. Sergio Zyman, people might be familiar with New Coke, another failed Coca-Cola enterprise.
Yeah.
Sergio Zyman was the man responsible. I don't know if he was directly responsible for the idea of New Coke, but he was at least responsible for like the marketing and the branding.
Right. So what happened with New Coke? What was that all about?
New Coke, there was some Pepsi, Coke's arch nemesis, did a series of, actually I don't know if it was Pepsi or Coke who did them. One of the two companies did a series of like blind taste tests, where they had consumers blind taste test Coke and Pepsi,
right,
in like little cups to see which they preferred, and it was found widely that people preferred Pepsi, right. And New Coke was the response to that, and so they had changed some of their flavoring, and apparently Pepsi was mainly a little sweeter. Mm-hmm. And then the long and short of it is that it was widely rejected. People didn't like New Coke. It was later found to be mostly because, like, in small, like, taste tests of a few sips, Pepsi is largely preferred. But if you would send people home and do a blind test with, like, 2 liters, mm-hmm. a lot of people would end up preferring Coke because it's less sweet. It's right. more palatable in larger quantities, and
right.
Pepsi is
if you drink a whole
more
can
palatable
or a whole bottle,
smaller quantities.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was failed. New Coke reverted to Coke Classic, and Sergio Zyman left or was fired, or he was no longer at Coke. But
and when was this development? Around the 80s?
Yeah, I'm not sure when that whole thing went down. But towards the end of the 80s, early 90s, Sergio Zyman comes back to Coca-Cola, and he's kind of given free reign to kind of do what he wants.
What is this
with
story?
The branding of
who's like, oh yeah, remember the biggest marketing fail we ever had?
Yeah,
remember the guy responsible for that? We're just gonna bring him back into the fold and let him try it again.
So the trick is
kind of a Steve Jobs story.
He had some successes, so I guess a lot of
successes outside of Coke.
No, he had some successes within Coke. Here, I can very quickly. One of his successes was Diet Coke. So
he made up for his
mistake. In a lot of ways, he made up for his mistake, and I think to a certain extent he was probably not wholly blamed for the New Coke failure, because he was merely a marketer. So I don't think he probably didn't push the idea into existence as much as failed to probably market it as well as it could have been.
Yeah. Interesting.
But anyway, Sergio Zyman, he comes back on the scene at Coke, and he's given kind of free reign to do what he wants with the marketing and branding of some new sodas. One of them was Fruitopia, which had this very bold, colorful color scheme.
I remember Fruitopia.
And ended up being fairly successful. It's not a huge...
It's not on the shelves anymore.
Yeah, but at the time, it was notable. The other is OK Soda, which is remembered largely for its oddball marketing campaign.
I confess that I do not remember seeing OK Soda on the shelf.
It's not surprising that you didn't, because it was only on shelves for less than a year, I want to say, and in very select limited release. There was a test launch in the summer of 1993. Some of the cities it was in included Austin, Texas, Boston, Denver, Cincinnati, Fargo, Knoxville, Portland, and maybe 10 or 15 other cities. No huge ones like New York or none of the major...
kind of mid-sized cities.
Yeah, it was mostly mid-sized cities, and it wasn't really introduced in rural areas. So, yeah, it flew under the radar for a lot of people. But the most notable aspect of this was its kind of anti-marketing approach to its own marketing. So the way they came up with the name was in the early 90s, Coke, all around the same time, Coke did some market research, and they determined that it's not verified by other sources, but at least according to Coke, Coca-Cola was the second most well-known term in the world, or most recognized term in the world. Coca-Cola was the second most well-known, and the first most well-known was OK. And so, not to be outdone by OK, they, shoot for the top and went after OK Soda. It was also kind of based loosely, or not based on, but sort of commenting on some of the self-help pop psychology culture of the preceding 2 decades, specifically a book called I'm Okay, You're Okay by Thomas Anthony Harris. And he was a pioneer of transactional analysis, which is about modifying the ego state and affirming your own positive aspects.
So kind of a power of positive thinking?
Yeah, it was kind of some of the early variations of that. Just a lot about kind of accepting yourself and finding your own okayness in yourself, which is something that OK Soda really kind of leveraged and tried to play off of. And
so when you hear OK Soda, it's not really supposed to mean, oh, this soda is just okay. It's supposed to be like getting to a level of, hey, everything's okay.
Yeah. I mean, there was a little bit of both of that.
Right.
There was kind of a wink, like we're not claiming this is the best soda ever. It's just okay. But there was also a lot of talk in the marketing kind of about okayness and measure your
own state of well-being.
They had a commercial where it was like, what is your level of okayness? And there was like an okayness meter, and it's like okay, pretty okay, very okay, I'm okay, or something. And then it had like the outline of a hand on the TV, and then it was like, place your hand here, and like the meter like goes up to like very okay or something like that, and like that was the commercial. So they kind of played off of that.
It's almost like a Buddhist state of balance.
Yeah. Brian Lanahan, Coke's manager of special products, told Time magazine, it under-promises. It doesn't say, this is the next great thing. So it was kind of all made in response to just like the flashy, over-the-top marketing of the 90s and
the 80s too.
And the 80s, and just like a response to that, and being like, you people who are tired of being beat over the brow with
consumerism and
and drink this soda, it's gonna give you the life you want. No, we're not gonna say that. It's just a soda, it's just okay. And so the cans, the advertising was very meta in a sense. The cans were gray and black and white with a little red here and there. They kind of had some comic design artwork on them. They hired comic artists from well-known comic publishers at the time. So in addition to the illustrations that were on the can, there was a 1-800 number that you could call, 1-800-I-FEEL-OK. And they also usually had little text boxes with coincidences on them.
On the can?
On the can. An example would be, the night he first tried OK Soda, Rick B. of Aurora, Colorado, put a full can under his pillow and went to sleep. He dreamed he was crawling through an endless gravel pit, parched with thirst. When he awoke, his thirst had disappeared, and he felt strangely satisfied. Note, the can of OK, still unopened, was empty. This is only a coincidence. So these coincidences were on the can. You could call in to the 1-800 number and record your own coincidences or testimonies related to OK Soda, and you could hear other people's coincidences. You could also hear bird calls and random music. They just had a lot of kind of quirky quirky stuff. There was also an OK manifesto that and parts of the manifesto were sometimes included on the can and in the advertising, and they were sort of pithy platitudes, kind of thought reform sayings and doublespeak. Some examples of this would be, what's the point of okay? Well, what's the point of anything? Or the better you understand something, the more okay it turns out to be. OK Soda says, don't be fooled into thinking there has to be a reason for everything. And there is no real secret to feeling okay.
It's got a very... it's very surprising that a brand like Coke would go for something like that.
Yeah, it was pretty bold at the time. Like, from my limited research of like the kind of the state of soda at that time period, like now we're a little bit more used to sodas being branded in a more in kind of a very specific way like that. Like we have drinks like Red Bull that are very
that have a really
marketed in very specific ways,
or very targeted,
right? And we have drinks like Snapple that have like messages on them or things like that. But at the time, to kind of have like a soda can that had cartoon art and like this whole meta narrative of advertising.
Well, just the narrative of it is what's so interesting.
Yeah, was very peculiar.
Anti-advertising
right
approach is what's so fascinating about it.
All right, let's see. OK Soda broadcast ads, 1994. They really like to include barcodes.
It's interesting.
As a part of their branding.
They concern the distinctive taste of OK. Here is one such document. All additional documents have been withheld, pending further declassification in Obscurigami.
So this one commercial, it just has like a document that has redacted, all the text has been redacted except for a few words that say like fruity, citrus, bubbles.
Yeah. So what kind of soda was this OK Soda?
We'll get to that in a second. I want to play a few more of these.
In the meantime, please enjoy that feeling of okayness, which is only restricted to those who drink our beverage. OK Soda has been criticized for marketing efforts that exclude some people. Therefore, the rest of this commercial may be viewed by anyone holding a small pocket mirror to the screen.
And then the rest of the ad plays in reverse. It's just a bunch of text on the screen in reverse that you would presumably need a mirror to read. We'll put a link in the show notes to some of these commercials so you can check them out. And it's just that, like, to me, there's a sort of brilliance to that. Like, this would have really, especially as a young person, I feel like would have been very attractive.
Yeah, it's
to
pretty
me,
different
like,
from everything else that was out at the time.
Especially at its time. Yeah, now we're fairly acclimated to like a Super Bowl commercial that pokes fun at itself, or like, you know, advertising that has a certain like meta quality or narrative to it. It's not uncommon. Like the Old Spice ads have a certain level of like absurdity and self-awareness. But that was not at all common at the time. So yes, you kind of alluded to earlier what the flavor of this.
Yeah, that's the big question. It seems like they had a brilliant marketing campaign. So what did the soda actually taste like, and was it a success?
So Tom Perico, who was someone at Coke who did an interview with NPR at the time, said the audience that this product is aimed for is an audience that is sort of accustomed to being smashed on the side of the head. So you have a flavor that is sort of out there.
sort of out there.
I read that wrong. Tom Perico was not someone who worked at Coke. He was just Tom Perico was a marketing consultant at the time. He
gotcha.
did
He
an interview. He did an interview with NPR covering OK Soda.
Gotcha.
And he said, "This is not a drink for the timid. The whole premise of the drink is just sort of to rock the taste buds, I think. So this drink really steps forward and does affect you."
That doesn't sound like...
Those were his words.
Just okay.
It doesn't really sound just okay.
Based on what he just said, it sounds like the taste of the drink was pretty much bolder than just okay.
Yeah, that was his opinion. It's described as sort of a unique fruity soda, citrus flavored. People have tasted or have described it as tasting a bit like mixing a bit of Coke with some root beer and Dr. Pepper and maybe a little bit of orange soda. I did some reading on Reddit. There were some threads from people who had actually tasted the soda, who were exposed to it when it was actually out on the market. Mm-hmm. And some of the people talked about the taste being inconsistent. So maybe it like tasted a little different from can to can. People described it as being very similar to suicides or graveyards, which is the practice of mixing every soda at a soda fountain together. Because of this, there was some speculation that that's literally what Coke was doing, was mixing just leftover soda together. I tend not to believe that because it doesn't make sense. I don't think you have second run soda or leftover soda.
No, not the way they bottle it. Yeah, that's interesting.
But regardless,
it doesn't sound very
it doesn't
good.
It was largely like nobody. There's people who say it was disgusting and they didn't like it. There were people who said it was okay. But if there was anything that people were into, it was the branding.
Yeah.
And nobody was specifically into the taste. So
that's interesting.
It wasn't.
So that could be a contributing factor
to its
the fact that we can't buy it at the supermarket now.
A Reddit user named South Shore Bum said the soda was absolutely terrible. What they had that was awesome, though, was the 1-800 number. You could call and record messages and other stuff. It was how me and my friends would call each other late at night. Person A would call the 1-800 I feel okay, and person B would dial person A. That way, they would answer the call from call waiting instead of the ringer waking up their parents.
Gotcha.
So the 1-800 number was popular, it sounds like, from some of my research and reading, but not among people who actually wanted to buy OK Soda. It was more kids interested in the novelty, or people wanting to goof off.
So do you think if this marketing campaign had been attached to something different, it would have changed the fate of OK Soda?
I think if it had tasted good, it certainly would have had a shot. I don't necessarily think it was a bad marketing campaign.
Well, let me ask another hypothetical that I know you don't have the answer to, but what if OK Soda had been an energy drink and it was the beginning of the energy drink craze? Would the energy drink craze have happened in 1994? Or was it too early?
It could have. The main problem I see of that, which may have made it even more successspecially, or it could have just,
because it is similar to energy drinks in some of the ways that it's marketed,
died in the water, is like especially if it was the first energy drink, it definitely doesn't say energy. Like nothing about the marketing speaks like you will be energized by this.
Yeah.
So I can almost see that working now, kind of in response to energy drink marketing, for an energy drink or a more unique soda. But I don't know if it would have kicked that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's almost time. The idea of feeling okay is almost kind of what an energy drink sells you.
Right. No, that's true.
It sells you that idea of a feeling that you get from drinking it.
Right. Yeah.
More so than most sodas do.
Yeah.
Although Dr. Pepper has kind of a campaign.
Yeah.
That's similar.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my big... The interesting question that it raises to me is because like this kind of marketing campaign with like a meta self-awareness, as we said before, is not uncommon today. But the thing that I was unusual about it, and it still is unusual to this day, was the kind of not nihilistic but just very non-traditional take on life. Like having something in your manifesto that says, what's the point of okay? Well, what's the point of anything?
Right.
Is pretty bold for a marketing campaign.
Yeah, it's like stepping into the world of philosophy.
Right. And it's one thing for an advertising campaign to kind of poke fun at itself and make you laugh and be like, oh, haha, marketing is a bit silly. We can kind of acknowledge that. Yeah. But is it going too far to say like life is maybe a bit silly, or like, start being that philosophical with a marketing campaign?
Yeah, and that's the thing that's poison death to marketing people normally, because they want to reach as broad of an audience as possible.
Right. Yeah.
And the quickest way to do that, or to kill your chances of doing that, is to target yourself to a specific ideology.
And you're selling, most of the time you're trying, the whole point is to try to associate good feelings with your product, so that people buy your, hopefully associate good feelings with your product and then want to buy your product to get those feelings.
Yeah.
So you can brand in an offbeat, non-traditional way to stand out.
Yeah.
But is it really associating the feelings that you want to associate with your product and doing that?
Maybe. I mean, if it's targeted specifically to a group of people and that group of people is big enough.
Right.
Like if there was a big enough youth movement.
Well, but that takes me to the final reason I think it was probably unsuccessful, was that even if it's successful in doing that and kind of reaching that group of kids, if you're really the disillusioned kind of young adult who's grown up on advertising now and everything's bright and flashy and Fruitopia and, this is going to make you feel great and, just learn to help yourself and have some positivity and self-esteem. Now we're going to subvert that and beat you over the head with this huge, bold marketing campaign that's all about how you don't want to be marketed to. At the end of the day, it's still a marketing campaign. It's still trying to manipulate you.
It's still trying to market to you.
And still trying to market to you, all while saying, we understand you don't want to be marketed to. We understand you don't want to buy into this. This culture.
But there's something to be said for a marketing campaign that's like, well, we understand that we kind of like, it's almost like saying we have to market.
Right.
Because Coke is making us.
Yeah.
But we don't really want to, so we're going to make these kind of anti-establishment ads.
Yeah.
And I could see that could work if it came out at the right time. And
yeah. Or if maybe it had been like a different company, because ultimately,
that's true.
It sold like 1 million cases during its test run, which isn't low, but by Coca-Cola standards, it wasn't enough, and it just got canceled.
Gotcha.
So, in the hands of a smaller business or something like that, it may have had enough steam to keep going.
Yeah. But would a smaller business have the wherewithal and the means to put together a marketing campaign like that?
Yeah.
Is really the question.
It did gain kind of somewhat of a cult following. There was fan websites that got put up after it got canceled, and people wrote letters to Coke asking if it would ever come back. And they got letters back from Coke saying no, it wouldn't. So there was definitely a group of people that it did connect with.
Yeah.
And people, like, you can hear there's recordings from the call-in line where people would call in, and record like a coincidence or a testimony that was very kind of like in line with like marketing campaign. Like people would play along. Let me see if I can find an example. Some of these are pretty good.
The music choice in the ads kind of reminds me of Pulp Fiction. which came out that same year.
Right around that same time. This is the bird calls.
Tweet, tweet. Cuddle, cuddle. Cuddle, cuddle, cuddle.
I think this might be about as avant-garde as advertising has ever gotten.
This OK coincidence selected especially for you.
Hi, I'm Bruce J. from Seattle, and during my vacation in LA, a friend offered me some OK soda, and I turned it down. That was the night before the earthquake. Yikes.
There's recordings of people who called in and left recordings who, you know, had messages very similar to kind of the whole thing or the whole aesthetic. So it definitely connected with a certain group of people.
Yeah.
I guess ultimately it just wasn't a large enough group.
For Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
A funny story I'll end on is related to the artwork that went onto the cans. They commissioned some known comic artists at the time, and when they were getting the concept up and running, someone from Coke contacted an artist named, I believe, David Close, and Close, he got the mock-up and he sent them some art back, and he said, quote, "I knew full well that what they were trying to do was not possible, that you could not market to cynical hipsters by being cynical and hipsterish, but the pay was good, more than Close had made on his last 5 comics, so he took the job, not imagining that he didn't think it was, he was very skeptical and didn't think it would ever see the light of day. With sort of a rebellious subversion, much in the tradition of OK Soda, he drew his mascot for the can to look like Charles Manson." And he said, "They made me sign all this non-disclosure paperwork and stuff, but nothing ever said, 'Don't put a mass murderer on the can.'" There's a really great article.
Sounds like David was a bit of a cynical hipster himself.
Yeah, there is a great article that kind of covers some of the artists that did work for it.
The artwork is quite interesting.
And it's worth reading. I'll include the link.
They're some of the most interesting looking cans that I've seen.
Yeah. No,
but,
I mean,
now we have Jones Soda and all kinds of other things like that.
It's a clever little campaign, and
it's a shame it didn't have a better soda attached to it.
Yeah.
I've often wondered why there's not more variety in soda.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a few flavors that have really stuck and we keep going back to.
Yeah.
There's like the cherry and the cola and the orange and the ginger ale and the root beer.
And that's mostly the extent.
And that's the lemon lime.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much it. So props to them for trying. But
I think they had this idea about marketing and soda because of kind of the behemoth in terms of like branding and recognition that some of their other drinks like Coca-Cola or Sprite had become. But ultimately, those drinks developed first because people liked the drink, and then became wildly recognized and known because of good branding on top of the drink. And I don't think it's necessarily ever worked to lead branding first in a drink category, because ultimately people have to like to drink it.
Yeah, as they do with Diet Coke.
Yeah. And oddly enough, Fruitopia, which is almost the polar opposite of a marketing campaign that you could get from OK Soda, developed by the same marketing guy at the time, was successful at the time anyway. And OK Soda was dead in the water. Randomly enough, I saw an ad just the other day for Sprite. There's this ad with several celebrities in it. I don't remember exactly who, but it kind of has them saying, I could say drinking Sprite would make you feel refreshed on a hot day, but I'm not going to do that. And the whole ad is just them going through like these series of like great things about Sprite and then saying like, but I'm not going to tell you, or I'm not going to say that. And then they're like, we could have this guy over here sing a song about how great Sprite is and whatever, but we're not going to do that. Right. And that's like the whole ad. Yeah. And I'm like, it's very reminiscent of sort of OK Soda. But in contrast to OK Soda, it takes a certain page from that playbook, but at the same time, it has celebrities in it. Yeah, it was very bright and airy and colorful, and
it holds back a little bit.
Yeah, and it still holds back just a little.
That reminds me of the mini campaign where they it was a Super Bowl ad I think they had, where they had a bunch of celebrities. It's similar to that, where they were kind of stating all the things that people say, negative things about Mini Coopers. Like, this car is too small, or this car is gay, and but they would have like a famous gay person or a famous short person saying that, and then the whole idea was that being small or being gay could be kind of badass. Yeah, and it was that kind of a presentation. Yeah, I guess that campaign, in a way, has kind of influenced a lot of others. Yeah, or maybe they sprang up.
From time to time.
From separately. Maybe they grew up separately. There's no connection to OK Soda, but it definitely seems like it, because there's so much of that in marketing now. Yeah. That there wasn't then.
Yeah. Yeah, regardless of whether it originated or was influenced by OK Soda, there's certainly a similar theme that's kind of grown in popularity over time. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to see, and it's funny to watch some of it become kind of like a self-parody. Like, I hate Chevy's commercials where they like to bring in quote-unquote real people, not actors. I think they even call their ads like real people, not actors. Yeah. And they just have all these people like standing around just like spouting off the most ridiculous like BS about Chevy vehicles and like acting surprised, and like they just stage these absurd sort of situations that presumably started from a place of like, we want to subvert advertising by, trying to
appearing genuine,
show this almost documentary style.
Yeah, well, it's like reality TV
ad, but eventually it just morphs into this like crazy parody of itself, where they have an ad now where they just sit a bunch of people down in front of a Chevy and they're like, choose the emoji that best represents this Chevy. Mm-hmm. And it's like so absurd.
Yeah, they should definitely find new roads. Yeah, it's like reality TV. I mean, it's supposed to like convey this idea of reality. Yeah, but it's clearly staged, or very likely staged. Time to do the random. Go on to Wikipedia.
The random Wikipedia section.
This is the part of the show where we go to the old randomizer on the old Wikipedia, and do the old push of the old button.
The worst part of the show.
And then
or the best.
Then we find an old article with words we can't pronounce. Yes. That's pretty much how it works.
Ding, ding, ding.
So,
what do we got today?
I'm going to push the button. Independence Day is a song by Martina McBride. It is written by Gretchen Peters, and it was released in April of 1994. Around the same time as OK Soda.
You're not talking about Independence Day 1997? The cinematic masterpiece?
No. I was actually talking about the country music masterpiece. Independence Day.
Oh, by Martina McBride.
That's the one. Written by Gretchen Peters. It was first offered to Reba McEntire, who turned it down, and it went on to be a hit, a top 20 hit.
Spinning right now, we have Martina
McBride.
McBride. Got a little Independence Day. This is for all you out there lighting up your sparklers, eating your watermelon right now,
sipping your OK Soda.
It's funny, you would think red, white, and blue would be kind of a theme in this song, and it clearly is, because you can tell in the music video there's a lot of red, white, and blue objects.
Mm-hmm.
But the video is in black and white.
We still didn't get to the chorus.
The song peaked at number 12 on Hot Country Songs.
The song is sung from the point of view of a daughter who recounts her mother's response to domestic abuse.
In the official music video, the girl is at the 4th of July parade when she sees two clowns pretending to hit one another, and the sight hits too close to home. Suddenly, she no longer sees the parade as fun and returns home.
But the home is burning.
By the time she gets back.
Presumably because the mother burned it down.
And she's shown at the end of the video crying in the back seat of a police cruiser as she is being taken away to the country children's home.
I'm not sure how to feel about this.
Beginning shortly after the September 11th attack, Sean Hannity began using part of the chorus as an opening bumper for his Premier Radio Network's talk radio show. How do you like that? The song is, Wikipedia notes, the song is about domestic violence, not patriotic values, according to the writer of the song, who does not agree with Hannity's use of the song.
It's been covered by Taylor Horn, Carrie Underwood, Lil Rounds, and Tristan McIntosh.
She can't stop Hannity's use of the song, so she collects royalties, and she chooses to donate them to her causes, because I guess she doesn't want to take...
She doesn't want to take blood money.
Hannity's money.
Fair enough.
It was nominated for several awards, won Song of the Year at the 1995 Music Association Awards, and Video of the Year.
Yeah, this is not obscure at all.
CMAAs.
This lady's written a lot of other hit songs, too. Gretchen Peters, not Martina McBride. Although Martina McBride presumably has as well.
Do better next time, Ben, when you hit the random button.
Sorry. At least there was nothing that we really butchered in the pronunciation.
I don't know. I think we have a skewed view. I think we see anything we can pronounce as not obscure and things we can't pronounce as inherently obscure. And I just want to point out that what's the word?
Well, apologies to any of our other listeners who are not in the American South. But Jesse, Matthew, and your dad all are in the American South. All of them have probably listened to Hannity's radio show at some point in time.
Yeah.
So to our audience, perhaps not that obscure.
Very good. Anything else you want to say about Independence Day?
No.
Song or otherwise?
I don't really have a lot of commentary on it since we haven't listened to the whole song.
Yeah. So if people wanted to find other episodes of the show notes, places to subscribe, Obscurigami.com, or email us with your feedback or suggestions, which we will most likely ignore. And to do that, that would be obscurigami@gmail.com. 1 hour we recorded for. I think that's a record.